All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I know we'll get a few more people as time goes on, but let's go ahead and get the Literacy Directors meeting going for today. We got quite a few things to cover. Our friends from UEN have graciously come to walk us through some e-media and some new features from UEN. We're going to talk about the secondary literacy framework. We're going to do a little bit of workshopping in here because I want to get more ideas from our LEAs and some ideas for discussion. We've built a small team from Utah State Board of Education, and we're starting to put some things together, but what we really want to do is get feedback from the LEAs, and so today will be an opportunity to cover some of those items. Talk a little bit about needs assessment. The needs assessment I'm conducting, so far we've had a couple of participants. It's been great so far, some of the information I gathered. I'll get into a little more detail about that. And then we'll talk about what's coming up and any questions or answers that you may have. So without further ado, I'd really like to just turn the time over to Michael from UEN.
Thanks.
And he's going to walk us through a bunch of stuff. Be ready to participate.
Yeah.
As a former teacher, he knows what to do.
Former elementary school teacher. And then curriculum, like educational technology specialist. And then UEN, where I am now. I get to travel all around the state, so I know there's a couple people online right now that are joining us, like Tamara and Kane County. Hi, if you're out there, and anybody else that's joining us. We're going to talk for the next 45, 50, 55 minutes about e-media, which how many of you have used or heard of? One person. Okay, so we need to improve our marketing. At Utah's Education Network, we provide all of the internet to your public schools, colleges, universities, and public libraries. And one of our tools online, as well as giving you the best internet in your schools with some of the best content, is Utah's Online Library. And in there, you'll find e-media. So if you're familiar with Safari Montage, if you're familiar with Discovery Education, or any of those other video repositories, e-media is one that the state has already funded and paid for. So I want to be careful how I say this. It's not free, because when you hear free, it means that it's not good stuff and it's not supported. It's not free. It's already paid for. So you can make use of it in your schools since it's there. So we'll talk about how to get there. But first, what I want to give you is this shortened URL. So you can either write it down, snap a picture of it with your phone, or Garrett, you can email it to the whole group, right?
Yep.
Or just open up a new tab on your browser by hitting Control-T or Command-T if you're on a Mac, and type in go.uen.org/BLL. And those are lowercase L's, so it's not BII or B11. BLL. When you get there, you'll be in this slideshow with me. I won't be controlling your slides, but that way you have it if you want to give it to teachers at your school to use with their students, or if you want to share it with your team. They say, what's e-media? You've got a slideshow to teach you how to use it. Did everybody get that? And is it working?
No. So it's going to presidents of the States. Yeah, presidents of the United States. It's a
Oh, that's fun. Maybe we should do our presentation on that.
looks cool.
Let's double check it. What's the URL again? I made it the other day. Yeah.
To create it.
Yeah.
No, Presidents of the United States.
It's a page at UES, but it's about presidents. Liberty.
Wait, my password?
No, short. S.
Capital S?
No, lowercase. 0. So I sent out the email 0. And capital S. Chairman. Okay, thank you.
0, RTEN, capital N. We're going to try a Google shortener. Or I can do a tiny URL. That might be better. I did, and they weren't happy, so you're asking them again. Should answer. Okay, so do you mind if I jump on that computer for just a few seconds? Remember everything I just said about that shortened URL? Try this instead. Tiny URL. I just have to do it over here. Okay. tinyurl.com/emedia2018. I made that last week. Did that work? tinyurl.com/emedia2018. I see a bunch of anonymous animals getting into the slideshow, so I'm assuming that's working. tinyurl.com/emedia2018. Okay. Good? Thanks. Sorry for that tech problem. So what you're going to find on this slide when you get there are 3 YouTube videos. You don't need to watch them right now, but they're there for you to share with students. So if you want to just put getting started, creating groups, and creating and sharing resources, each one of these videos is just a couple minutes long and it shows you how to do exactly that. So I put that into the slide so you could share it with kids or teachers and they could use it on their own. Then here are the steps for getting logged into eMedia, and that's what I'm going to have you do now. So one more time, who remembers that teachable moment, how to open a new tab using just your keyboard? Control-T or Command-T.
Or Command-T.
Command-T for Mac. Go ahead and do that and type in uen.org. That will take you to our website.
So tiny URL still at that point.
Oh, that's just the
Blocks me.
slideshow. If you, oh, it blocked you?
Uh-huh.
Okay, we'll get that to you.
So
There you
just
go.
follow along.
Yeah.
I'll just follow along.
Yeah, go ahead and open that browser up again. And go to .org. Once you're at uen.org, you'll see that purple banner that goes across the top. And there's things up there like pre-K through 12, higher ed, general learner. And I should point out this one that says professional development. When you hover over professional development, a little menu pops up, and that's where you can go and request trainings at your school from our team or sign up for any of our classes. That's where you can reach us. But what I want you to do is hover over pre-K through 12 education, and a menu will pop up. And in the second column, under General Resources, it'll say Utah's Online Library right there at the top. Click on that. Now that you're in Utah's Online Library, this is where all of those resources that we've already paid for are located for you. We probably won't dive into all of them today. We won't get to many of them at all. But we will end at a time where you can ask questions about some of these if you have any. How many people have used the Gale reference collection? This is like the most powerful thing online for Utah students. Fantastic databases all linked together, very easy to use. Noodle tools. Have any of you taken the Noodle tools training that we did? That's super powerful. And then over on the far left, look for that little green E like you see in our logo, and that's eMedia. Click on that, and you'll be at our new eMedia. Everybody see it? So up on the screen, I have the old eMedia. This is what it used to look like, just to refresh any prior knowledge. It used to have a quick search bar up here with the home and resources, some quick links on the left, and then your results would be right here. It wasn't the most user-friendly. It's very powerful, but not the easiest to find content. So this is what the new one looks like. This is much more intuitive, and it's similar to what most browsers and repository search engines look like. You've got what are you looking for on the far left. And then you can fine-tune with subject, educational level. Standard is kind of hollow right now, and then you would click search. And then there's also an advanced search if you need to filter by media type and things like that. Notice up at the top, it says, hello, Katie Garrett, in the upper right-hand corner. Yours has a little sign-in place, right? By the way, that's Katie Garrett over there. She came just because we used her sign-in. I should introduce Katie. She is our director for managing video resources. Did I say that correctly?
You just gave me an upgrade, but sure, I'll take it.
Is that a director?
I'm the project manager for eMedia.
Director, Sarah, just know it. Okay, so Katie's here to answer any other questions we have because she's behind the whole upgrade. Working on it. So compare the two, right? Before it was kind of this clunky DOS 2.0 looking type of thing, and now it's much more visually interactive and much easier to use. Okay, so signing in, how do we do that? You're going to use your my.uen login. So click the sign in button, and it will prompt you for that. As you're getting ready to go in there, I want to point out some other new features are that you can now save items you search for by putting them into folders and even putting them into groups. So this means if you have a group of students that are collaborating on a research project, or you have a team of teachers, or even a school that are using the same resources, you can save a lot of time by organizing them all into your group. You can also evaluate the resources. There are rubrics built in. There's a place where you can build lessons and modules about the content and share it that way, which is really powerful for USBE when you think about curriculum and development. And then there's also going to be additional content with OERs. That's the new buzzword, right? Open Educational Resources. So this will lend itself to that medium very well. Okay, so everything went live on October 1st. We got some feedback, we tested it, and it's been implemented. So now for your group, you just go to eMedia and you only see the new one. What I'm going to have you do is log in, give you some time to locate resources, create a group, and then even go in and look at how to build a lesson. So I'll walk you through this first, and then I'm going to give you lots of time to explore and build. So let's start with signing in. You went to emedia.uen.org. The way you went there was to go to our website, then go to pre-K through 12, Utah's online library, and then click eMedia. So what is that, 5 or 6 steps? So something you might want to teach your students and teachers is how to just go to this directly, emedia.uen.org. Or even bookmark it on your school's website or bookmark it in your toolbar. But that's basically it, emedia.uen.org.
Yeah, if your students need access, you'll definitely want to send them through the online library because they shouldn't have access to like creating groups and lessons and things like that. But for you, if you're wanting those interactive features, it's easy enough just to sign in with your own account.
So once you got there, you clicked on sign in right here, and that should have brought up a new window that said UEN login. So everything's behind this login. For students, when they log into Utah's online library, they have that password that's on this bookmark in front of you. Students don't get their own individual accounts. They just use online and learning. And that way we can keep track at the state level of who's using Utah's online library. Now we don't want to give this out, so you don't want to put online and learning on your school website because we want to use it with just students in Utah. But I can speak to that as a educator in Maryland. When I taught back there for about 15 years, I used UEN resources all the time for all my trainings. I was stealing from you, the taxpayers of Utah. That's just how we collect the numbers. But for the teachers, you're going to have that MyUEN. Now, if you forgot your MyUEN login and password, you'll see a little place over here that says Register Forgot. So let's say you're showing this to a first-year teacher who just came to your school. They don't have a MyUEN account yet. They simply click on there and create one. And they need to have a Utah school email to do it. Once you're logged in, you'll see the interface of eMedia, and we're going to go through these tasks right here, first as a group, and then I'll let you explore on your own. So can I use that? Yep. All right. So are you, by any chance, logged in already, Karen, or no?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So I'll open a new tab, uen.org. And what Katie said is really important. When you go through UEN, then you're kind of like bypassing all of the protected firewall and everything. So it's a good idea to at least start this way. Go to Utah's online library. And scroll down to eMedia, and I'll log in. By the way, if you also forget that password, you'll see it down here. Login name, online, password learning.
That means if students are using it in the classroom or on a school computer, they won't need to log in with the password.
That's correct. Since they're already on a UEN network, it just goes right to the resources. And it says on this one, hello Utah student, because that's who's logged in. If I want to change that, I'll log out and then log in as myself. I can log in as Garrett. Should we log in as Garrett?
Password still works.
Oh. Yep. So we're
Perfect.
good. All right, so up at the top, just so you can all see, there's a Discover tab. If you click on that, it will drop down to where you can go straight to resources, collections, and providers. So if you're wondering where we get our media from, click on providers, and they're all listed out, alphabetical order. So everything from Ambrose, BC Campus, Carnegie Halls, Wheel Music Institute, and you can see how many resources are from there. So like one is Digital Science Online. We get almost 500 things from that. Okay. If you click on hubs, this is where you can go in and create a hub, or if you're part of like a hub, we have one made already, the Utah's OER collection. Are there any other ones?
No, probably groups are more of interest because this is anyone can create a group. A hub has to be done kind of at a statewide level. It's more for an organized project. If there's, a big group of e-textbooks we want to bring together, we can create hubs around content, but groups are a lot more flexible and just anyone can do it.
So we can make a hub for middle school language arts specialists or something like that.
Yeah, but that has to be done at the state level. Groups, anyone can do.
And that's the next one, groups. And it says here, Garrett hasn't created a group yet, but he can find a group. Over here on the right, there are groups for ELA content specialists, C-Forum, there's the OER collection, and then there's one for social studies. Or you can click create your own group and build one for yourself. And then under learn more, this is where you can go to get the about page and learn more about eMedia. Let's go back to the main page and do a search. And I asked Garrett earlier, like, what is it kids are doing right now, like in a 7th grade classroom this time of year? And he mentioned expository writing. So let's think of a subject that a student might want to find some video information about. What do you have? Oh, out of topic.
Earthquakes.
Earthquakes? All right, let's shake things up. That didn't,
That's a
I
good
got
one. I
one.
don't have stuff on that, so I'm like, oh, okay, good, we're good.
Nobody got my joke. All right, so earthquakes, if I click search, this is what happens, and this is the problem with things like Google. When you do a Google search for something, you'll get like 4 billion results in 1.7 seconds, which is great unless you're a kid trying to find something relevant, in which case now you have to comb through 4 billion results. When I did my search, I got 91. The difference between 91 and 4 billion is a lot. But to a 7th grader, it's the same thing. It's just too much stuff. Okay, so what I would recommend you do instead, I'll go back to that search one more time, and especially a classroom teacher, when you put in something like earthquakes, this is a nice feature. It remembers everything you searched for. You can then go in here to subject, and I'll say specifically science. Because I don't want to get a bunch of news stuff about an earthquake in Myanmar or something. I just want to know the science of it. And education level, let's go with middle school. And then standard, every time I click on this, it just says standard. Those aren't loaded
We
yet.
haven't
right?
loaded standards in yet.
Hey, it's free, man, right? No, I'm just kidding. But we'll put standards in there. Now when I click search, instead of 91 results, I get 78, which is a little bit better, right? But still, I need to comb through it. So of these 78 results, I can look at the view either the way you see it like this with a little thumbnail, or I can change it to a list, which allows me to see just the title. And this is real important. Check out these ratings. I could sort by ratings. or title or relevance. But if I go by rating, then all the good stuff, right, the cream rises to the top. So now I see one resource up here called Volcanoes and Earthquakes Ring of Fire, the Johnny Cash story. Now, it is a science subject from Utah Education Network. It says best for interactive whiteboards. And it also shows a little summary. A large number of earthquakes and volcanoes surround the Pacific Basin. This region is often referred to as the Ring of Fire. Well, if I want to watch it, I'll click on it, take me to the landing page of the movie. I need to, oh, no,
It's coming.
okay. When I click on it, it downloads it. This is not a movie.
Oh yeah, that one's just an
This
image.
is a JPEG. So I downloaded the picture, and that's probably why it said best for interactive whiteboards, because I can use this graphic on an interactive whiteboard to label and draw, etc. So an important thing to point out is that we're going to have more than just videos in eMedia. We're going to have all kinds of resources. But remember, our kid is looking for a video. So if I go over on the left, it says material type.
Actually, go to media format is where that's at now.
Then there's conditions, content source, primary user, media format. I've got graphics and photos or video, so I'll click on video, and now instead of 71 resources, I have 52. Okay. Congestion, excretion, here we go. Volcanoes and earthquakes, a shield volcano, animation. From 2012. The videos will have this little play button right on it. Click play. Brings up the viewing page. So if you're going to teach to the class and you want to present this on a projector, you can do full screen. Right down here is a little full screen button. This one's only 6 seconds long. So it's going to take about 2 minutes to load.
We're in the basement. Wi-Fi is not great.
There's also a download link in that bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
Okay, so down here you'll see a little settings icon, and then there's like a file picture with an arrow pointing down. If you click on that, you can download the video. So what this means is if a student is creating a multimedia presentation or project or building a website or something like that, they can take this content and use it in there. One of my favorite things to do, and this is as a 5th grade teacher, was to download like World War II videos from Discovery Education, put them into iMovie, and cancel out the sound, and then have the students find their own background music and narrate them themselves. So that sounds like fun, right? But think about the writing implications there. They had to watch the video, learn information, rewrite their own script, which was a ton of writing. I got way more writing out of them doing that than saying, write a paragraph about this. So they would write their script, then record, which is amazing fluency assessment, and then edit and save. So this allows your students to download content they want to use, and as long as it stays in the school, that's fine. This one's taking a long time, Katie. Are you uploading it right now as I'm demoing it?
I just checked other videos and they were playing.
Okay, let's go back to another one. Your computer doesn't like the basement?
No, it doesn't do well down here.
Here's one about tsunamis. Epicenter and focus.
Good idea.
The only problem if we were to switch to my computer, Garrett, would be that it wouldn't be able to present, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll hit play on this one. Let's see if we get good sound. Is it playing up there but not here?
I don't know why, it looked like it was going to play.
He was thinking about it. This one's 21 seconds long. So I want to pause for just a second while we're waiting for this to load. Mike, you want a second? When you're working with kindergartners, what's the average attention span of a 5 or 6-year-old? Do you know how long it is? 3 seconds? Yeah, it's like, people say, the research says it's your age times minutes. So a kindergarten is 5 to 6 minutes. But that's not necessarily true, because do you know what a 5th grader's attention span is? About 5 to 6 minutes. Middle schooler?
7 minutes.
It's actually 5 to 6 minutes. How about a high school student, a 12th grader in an AP physics class that's got a scholarship to Harvard? What's their attention span?
Depends on what you're doing.
It's 5 to 6 minutes. Yours is about 5 to 6 minutes. I can prove this. What's the average length of a song on the radio?
3
Oh, 3 to 4, right? So we're trying to keep your attention before we lose it. So when you're using video in the classroom, does it make sense to show a 20, 30, or 45-minute long video? Absolutely not. It's better to have segments of short videos. So when you see a video like this one that's taking a long time to load, it's actually Garrett's computer, because
It probably is. My computer gets fussy with videos because of firewalls and stuff. It shouldn't with UEN though.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting.
I'm wondering if that might be part of it too.
Probably
Is
something
anyone
I
else
did.
trying to play videos or having?
Well, sure.
How about the system down here?
Oh, yeah, I might be. So if you see a video that's like 1 minute and 21 seconds, I hope you're not thinking, that's too short, I can't use it. That's actually ideal. What we want is for students to be searching for videos, little tiny bits and morsels they can use that'll fill their attention span but not overwhelm it, that they can focus on, that they can rewatch, that they can click on things like closed captioning, and that they can download. And also, you can send it straight to Google Classroom if you use that. And then there's also a share button over here where you can get the link to put it to Canvas or any other tool that you're using. So shorter is actually not a bad thing. A couple other things you'll notice on this page is that there aren't any evaluations yet, but this is us. This is Utah. We want your evaluations. So when you find things that are bad, click on Evaluate and tell us why. When you see things that are good, click on Evaluate and give it a lot of stars, because then more teachers will use it. Okay, so we need to filter the content and make sure they're seeing what they need. We also see that it's been tagged. Here are some important words that are used with teaching earthquakes in science: earthquake, epicenter, and focus. If there were other tags that needed to go in there, you could add them. So if you wanted to type on there Richter scale or something like that, or what's it called that measures the earthquake? The what?
Seismology?
Seismograph. Words like that you can add. You can also leave comments. Now, as far as being able to retain this and keep it for next year, and when you want to use it again and again or share it with your teammates, that's when you would want to create groups. So you'll see the create button up there at the top next to the green drop down. So what kind of things can we create? We can submit it, another resource to the web. We can go into Resource Builder to create learning resources. We've got the Lesson Builder and the Module Builder. And if you want to build a group for where you can save everything and add people to it, you can go to create your own group right here. So here's what I'd like to do for about the next 10 to 15 minutes. I'll put these tasks back up on the board, and I will walk around and help answer questions as they come up. Katie's also available. But we want you to go into eMedia, make sure you can log in. Then start looking for some resources, create a group, and explore the resource and build a lesson options. And tell me, are you having the same trouble with watching a video that I did?
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Mine came right up.
Came right up on your phone? Cool. That's a really good point. Look at that. You're doing this on your phone? So a lot of our kids are walking into school with phones already in their pocket. They might have their own personal iPads, or you might have iPad carts. This website is mobile device friendly. Honestly. Yes.
So I can get in using the, I can get in using the, I used to have ones that Didn't send me an email yet.
There it is. Thank you for registering.
I have to verify it.
Use the phones. Yeah, once you're done that, then we'll have you in our records, and then you'll.
Videos?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean.
We're both state agencies
Okay.
that get our funding, part from the State Board of Education.
Oh, nice.
budget. So
Okay.
the same money that goes into USB. We also get a tremendous amount from grants from the University of Utah, and we're connected to public. So we're kind of part of that co-op that works very closely with these guys. We're also tasked with providing like statewide professional development on not only our tools and resources, but also Canvas, which we brokered with you with.
Oh, okay.
So we have, Canvas is paid for by the state legislation, but it goes to the end. That way we can get like CenturyLink and Verizon, Xfinity, Comcast, whatever you want to call it, to all kind of work with us to make sure that the internet is. Every school district had to do 10 to 100 times as much, It did let you in?
Yeah.
Great.
How do I create a group?
Okay, so go back up there. You're in Discover right now. You're logged in as a student, so you need to log in as a teacher.
Well, I thought I did.
Sign in again. Your username and password. Authentication failed. So do you have a MyUEN account?
Yeah, it had me redo my password,
Oh, okay.
and then,
Oh, so maybe you redid your password, but when you clicked the sign in, it still had your old password in there.
It's usually one of them. Just so you know too, it locks users out after so many failed attempts. So
Yeah.
give it like 10 minutes and then it'll.
Then we have to call Joanne Wong.
so then I guess.
Yep, click on that again. Oh, there you are. You're logged in now.
Yeah, it takes me to this page, but then it won't let me log into this.
Well, try and go ahead and close that, not that tab, but the tab you were just in. Close that. And then click on this. Well,
No, so go
that's
back.
Yeah, close that tab too.
And then just open a tab with emedia.uen.org.
Just to say,
And this will refresh your how you were automatically logged in.
it was just a question. I just wanted
Then try signing in again.
Yep, but do me a favor, this time, if it auto-populates your username and password, go replace it with your password that you just changed it to. 'Cause you said
It didn't
keep getting that.
It
Same fail.
didn't actually change the password, it just told me what it was.
Oh,
So I don't know. It's not like
So you are not authorized. What email address do you have associated with your?
my school email.
down there where it says login and the password.
Try it again?
Yeah, put in what you just got to change it to.
Three. S-O-N.
Request for proposal.
see you. I think so, because no, it's wonderful, but
Oh,
Put
and
it
you're
in.
in Salt Lake, so you guys
Yeah.
work with Sally.
we work with Sally. We love our Sally.
You love your Sally?
I
used
love
to work
my
with
Sally.
in the
Did
Kansas
ya?
district,
Oh, I'll
yeah.
tell her that you were
Oh,
here.
Michael Heckerinen says hello.
I will. I love Sally.
Cool.
Yeah, she's great. But they'll be the ones implementing.
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But we also they have a professional development they have to do, so.
Gotcha.
A full classroom set for school.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
But
Cool.
we thought we'd get as much in as we could.
If you want to grab some bookmarks for any of your coworkers
Oh,
or
that's a
staff
good
or
idea.
kids, grab those too.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
No, we did not. But I think that part of that, I know that that's.
Bethany?
My name's Bethany.
Yeah, you're checking on Bethany's, right?
I'm not.
How did you feel when you get in?
Yep, well, it finally gave me my login information, but it's taken me.
What school do you went to?
I'm at Canyons.
Where I was in 40 years ago.
Where were you, Jim? You were at.
I was in Darrington, Christine.
Right, no, I know that, but.
Yeah, I had.
Pages.
I was on, Midvale Elementary School and,
I mean, because everything,
and I was at
grades 3 to
Oakdale.
12. We mainly work.
Yeah, I had Hillcrest.
Supporters junior highs are pretty teachers.
I
took her position, she's our instructional specialist.
Okay.
Oh, for
So
the
she's
whole
still in curriculum and instruction, but she's the
my
instructional
wife?
specialist.
So that
Marnie is another one that's from Canyons that is in instructional coaching.
Less things than we had hoped.
So, yeah. You guys leaving too?
Jordan is a teacher and then.
Yeah, and then she did.
They want to teach you by it because it took us so long.
I remember you.
So, as I'm looking at this weekend profile, it's
Yes.
so if we want to
Oh,
expand
okay.
this, never used it. This is my own district. We wanted to do a book study. Looking at this,
You to create them.
Isn't it? It's very similar to like Google Classroom, but you can put resources in there, but also have discussions.
Assessment
which is what I was interested
So,
in.
Right.
So we can share resources down here,
Since
and
just a
then
couple
pin the
minutes, I
discussions
feel
here.
like
We
we
can
should
create
go
one
into
for each
it.
book. This looked like there's good.
Yeah.
I was really
It's like every
worried about this. Okay, good.
Yeah, give that a shot. You're from Weber?
Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you.
How are things working over here on your phone? Okay.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Have the library
There,
Congress in your
have the
hand?
whole world at
I
your
know.
fingertips.
It's destroyed so many marriages because you're like, that's not true. And then the wife gets out the phone and Googles it and you're like,
No, but you know, we're not gonna get rid of phones in the
Our
classroom.
schedules are probably
So
not.
I just keep trying to find ways to sneak through the back door and make them use their phone.
I know that some teachers only have
And don't be afraid to have times in the classroom where you just have all the phones out on their desks, face down. Like,
Exactly.
I used to say to kids, apple's up. You know, you got the apple on the phone. So the only way to put it up is put the screen down. And you just say, this is a screen-free time. You need to have a discussion verbally or whatever.
Things like buzzes.
Well, see, that's where I like struggle. I feel like if you need to teach kids now how to turn their phones to no ring, no buzz during the school day. Because if they don't learn it now, then it happens at work and, you know.
Or, well, yeah. But when I can use it for something like this,
Yeah, makes a lot of
it's
sense.
all okay.
You got it.
We voted.
All right, looks like everyone's doing pretty good. A couple of comments came up. One thing I didn't go very deep into, but if you click on groups and either create a group or join a group, when you get in there, if you have any experience with Google Classroom, it might look very familiar to you because it's that same type of stream, but there'll be a tab up at the top that says discussions. So this can be a place where you have asynchronous discussions with your team. Lady from Weber over here is talking about a book study, so that would work really nicely in there. Students can use the discussions if they're doing a research group or anything like that.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Just finishing up some notes.
Okay, use your phone.
If you want to.
How do they sign up for these? I wanted to talk about it.
Sign up for the monthly emails.
Yeah. Have you guys been getting emails from UEN about things like e-media? Have you seen this before? I just got this yesterday, and the reason I like it is because the e-media highlights, I think you can subscribe to them in your My UEN account. But I like this because it sends specific videos relevant to that time. So any social studies teachers you work with that need to cover either current events or historical events, look at this, because here I get information about National Native American Heritage Month here in November in Utah, and even things about Veterans Day. So these sort of like videos are great for sparking in the classroom a writing prompt. You know, we've always seen writing prompts as either a sentence or a picture on the overhead projector, then it became a picture on the smartboard. Well, now think about using short video clips as a writing prompt. Get monthly ideas from these emails. And the last thing, I want to ask what kind of questions you guys have. And we still have a good 10 to 15 minutes, so this would be a good time to also answer any questions you have about other resources in Utah's online library. Yes, ma'am.
So you talked about it having lots of videos. Isn't this also a repository of sounds, like for sound effects or background music that kids might want to use for a project?
But we have Sounds Abound.
That's where that is.
Let me show you that first. Katie, are we putting sound effects and other sounds into eMedia?
I am not. They used to be in eMedia, but honestly, the Sounds Abound web interface is better for searching music than eMedia was set up to do, so I would suggest just going through Sounds Abound to find those.
Now, if you were to just Google Sounds Abound right now and click on the first result, which would take you to the Sounds Abound website, you'll find out that it's a paid service and you don't have an account there. So that's why I would remind you to go to our website, make sure you're logged in, go to Utah's online library, and then that bypasses the sign-in and all of that and takes you directly to, it's over here on the right, Sounds Abound right there. And here's how Sounds Abound works. You click on it, opens a new tab automatically, at soundsabound.com, then look what it automatically puts up in the URL, /mymusic/Utah, which means you're already logged in. And this is where you can go for all kinds of soundtracks that are not copyright free. They're like copyleft. Does that make sense? They are like nonprofit. You are allowed to use them, but you still have to cite them, right? So here's like the categories. You want to listen to music from the 1600s? There's all these different like animation, Brazilian, dance, folk, looking for sound effects. Because my question for you, ma'am, would be, what exactly were you looking for a sound effect of? Do you know?
A lot of times the kids like to have music behind
Okay.
the project.
So just like relaxing music, but not a specific sound effect?
Background, and it might depend on the student and what their project.
Let's go with Scottish. Sound good?
Bagpipes.
I'm in the mood for bagpipes, right? So over here is the time cut. I can say 0 to 15 seconds, 15 to 30. Let's go ahead with 60 seconds or longer and click search. And you're going to get a search result with no results. I did like nothing come up for
The
Scottish.
history of my searches.
Not modern. Okay, so here
Go
comes
shorter.
some example ones.
Yeah, it's not on mute, so, oh, maybe.
Oh, I have to hit function, sorry.
Huh. Somebody doesn't like our audio files either.
Speakers or headphones. But you get the gist, it plays
I
the
give up.
sound. If you wanted to keep this file, you click this download button right here, and it sends it down to your downloads. It goes really fast too. So now I've got this sound effect or this soundtrack, and it's an MP3 format. So whether you're working on Windows machines and you're using like Movie Maker, it works. If you're working in an Apple environment, you can very easily drag that MP3 into iTunes and then be able to put it onto playlists, put it into iMovie, even put it into GarageBand, whatever you need to do with it, that file is yours. The only catch is you want to make sure that you can cite it. Citations are found in here as well. I did as volume 1 background variety. You can get the web link to it, whatever you need. That Sounds Abound. You will not find those in eMedia. Okay, that was a good question. Thank you for letting me highlight that tool. I use it all the time. If you ever watch our UEN PD TV episodes, have you heard about these? No? You have to see this. So, do we have them in eMedia? We don't, do we?
They're on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
I can't remember if we put them in eMedia yet.
Will
I think there's some in there.
YouTube be blocked down here?
What's that?
Will YouTube be blocked down here?
I don't think so. I have an audio cable and it's not there.
You're on YouTube and you go to UAN PD TV. We have up to 15 episodes now. And all of our TV episodes here are just like 10 minutes or less, short little videos. This one's about VR in the classroom over at Joel P. Jensen Middle School. Of course, this one's not loading, so.
No, it's got to be blocked then.
I think it's blocked, yeah.
The reason I show you this is all of our background music and sound comes from SoundSpout. Okay, what other questions do you have? Any other questions about Utah's online library? There. You notice I'm modeling the time, right?
Today.
No questions. Well, everyone just ate. So I understand there's a tryptophan, there's some serotonin that's coursing through the veins. The eyelids are getting heavy.
But where was the PD-TV? Was that through YouTube?
There's a couple of places. If you go to YouTube, we have a playlist there with them all. The
Also on
other
the
way-
website, yeah.
Yeah, if you just Google UEN, one word, and then PDTV, second word, we put them all on the UEN website as well. So it's uen.org. And what we do here is we put the most recent one first, but uen.org/PDTV. And you'll see that the titles are there. We have an episode on drones. We have an episode on noodle tools. We did a really good show about technology in rural Utah. Blended teaching and learning. We have one on AR, VR in the classroom. Probably one of the best ones we've made is this one about virtual reality in higher education, where we went and interviewed Dr. Durham with the dental school, who's created a VR lab for dental students to learn all the procedures and the sequence of everything from tooth extractions to making a mouth mold to all kinds of high-end oral surgery practices using VR. So rather than a mannequin or a real person that bleeds and screams, they put on these VR glasses and learn the procedures. It's really cool. And we have a new episode coming out in a couple weeks. One of them is about OER resources. It's a topic we're going on right now. But these are really fun to share with your staff, and even some of them are good for students to watch. You can find them on YouTube or at our website, uen.org/PDTV.
And how long did you say they are? How long do they last?
We keep them under 10 minutes long. Yeah, because you know what the average attention span is of a teacher?
Teacher probably 3 seconds, whoever said that over there.
5 to 6 minutes. They have a phone in there. 5 to 6 seconds. What else you guys got? Any other Utah's online library questions? Can I ask how many of you are at a district that has Safari Montage? Which one are you?
Granite?
How many of you are at a school district that has Discovery Education? Does anybody else pay for a online video service? Okay. So remember, this one is just it's brand new with the new interface. The more people use it, the more information will be on there, and the more we can start uploading and building lessons. This is in its infancy, but it's going to grow really fast. Katie, anything you want to add?
No, I'd say make sure you check out that groups feature. Even if you create a group with just 2 other specialists or 2 other teachers, it doesn't have to be a big formal thing. You can easily add and organize resources right in there. So if you want to create different folders based on an upcoming lesson or a theme, the groups I think are one of the most powerful new features.
You have 2 R's and 2 T's in your name?
2 R's, 1 T, close enough.
Got 2 now.
Yeah.
We're going to make a group called Garrett Rose's Awesome Teachers. We're going to select the grade level We'll go with pre-K.
And you can also set these to a closed group. So if you know it's just, I want to collaborate just among these 3 people and I don't want anyone in here messing it up, you can do that. Or you can make it a public group that anyone can join. So kind of think of Facebook groups in terms of those permissions. Yeah.
So I'll set his to needs approval. And now his group is created.
That means you get a lot of email, basically.
And there's what I was talking about with like discussion and members and information. If people find his group, yep, they'll ask if they can join it. And then the most important thing is if you made a group and you don't want to use it, how do we delete it?
I think you go to manage group on that left-hand side. And then scroll down.
Now we've got membership control. We can duplicate the group if we want to make another version of it for another school, and then delete group if we don't want it anymore. Done? Yep, it says deleting this will get rid of folders, subfolders, group information, all of that. Yes, it's gone. Now we're back to Garrett with 2 R's and 1 T. Great. Well, we're done about 5 minutes early, but if there aren't any more questions, we'll let you roll on with the rest of your meeting. And if you do have any questions, you can always contact us by email. Don't forget the address of uen.org. It's on these pens right here. The bookmarks have the username and password for students. Be aware it changes every year on August 1st. So will be for this school year. August 1st, we'll change it to a new username and password. And there's more bookmarks back there on the back table. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
I really hope that UEN keeps getting more and more traffic because there's so many sources and resources that can be used that just aren't. So I'd really like to see that grow. So thank you so much for your time. So we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk a little bit about the reading literacy framework. All right, secondary literacy framework. So we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting. We talked about some of the issues that are happening in our schools. We looked at some data points. We looked at NAEP. We looked at our SAGE scores. And I don't want to be a doom and gloom like, oh, we're just headed in the wrong direction, everything's wrong. There's a lot of things going right in the school, so we need to make sure that we're highlighting that as well. But we do need to focus on some of these issues. So I want you to think about this question for a minute, and I want to have a discussion about it. We talked a little bit about it last time, but I want to talk a little bit more about it, just kind of get the memories going, so that when we get into some group work, you guys are going to be grouped up in just a few minutes. We slimmed down a little bit from a few minutes ago, but I want to get you guys in groups. I want you guys thinking about ways that we can move this framework forward. Again, I've talked about how with the state board team, we've come up with some ideas. We've looked at the elementary document. There's some things that we decided the things that we wanted to keep that are, this is so weird when I keep moving around, sorry. So there's some things that we wanted to keep in the document, but there's things that are going to need to be added, things that are going to need to be deleted. And so when you came in, you should have picked up the elementary framework document, which looks like this. If you haven't, make sure you grab it so you have this as a point of reference. Because this document, which I really enjoy, and when I looked at it and I looked through it, I was like, this makes a lot of sense. The idea is to get building administrators and teachers and coaches talking and to assess and see where they are on these things and how they can move forward. And after those assessments, thinking of ideas of kinds of professional learning, things that can take place so we can attack these things and get our students to be not only just better writers, but really integrating knowledge and ideas, which is something we see that's deficient statewide, grade-wide, subject-wide. It's something that the students of Utah struggle with, and I don't think we're alone just saying that that's the case in Utah. So, thinking about these, what are the issues your LEA is facing in secondary literacy? What is needed to help leverage forward progress? How do we get the ball rolling and get those students being better writers, better thinkers? We can see evidence that they're integrating that knowledge and they're actually using it to make new meanings, to synthesize information. So what are some of the barriers that are getting in the way?
One question that we had was, how are we going to compare apples and oranges if we have students get a random selection for the end of year test? Like one year they write an argument essay and the next year they're writing a 2-paragraph informative essay. So are we going to be able to measure growth, or is it going to be too different? And monitor writing, especially because now it's writing 5th grade and then 8th grade. So is that even?
This is going to be a challenge. To me, this is uncharted territory for me. When I became a teacher in 2010, we were just moving away from the 5th, 8th grade. Now we're going back. So this is going to be uncharted territory for me. So I think it's going to be a big learning curve for me, and obviously a lot of teachers. And seeing that we're going back to that, I'm a little nervous about that because, again, and this is all hearsay. These are things that I heard from teachers as well. In 5th and 8th grade, they really, really focused on the writing, but we weren't seeing as much focus in the other grades. I don't want to say that teachers are not doing that or are doing that. That's kind of an unfair statement, but those are just whisperings that I heard. And obviously, we don't want that to happen. Saw your hand go up.
It's kind of related to that. In RISE, there will be writing benchmarks, right?
Uh-huh.
Will they be graded by that same AI that grades the end of year?
That would be a question for Megan. I'll have to ask her about that. That's a very good question. So in RISE, who's grading it? Okay.
Yeah, and it used to be related to Utah Compose. Is it going to be? Because I heard that's also being renegotiated, so.
Again, I'll have to ask Megan for she was supposed to. She might be in here in a few minutes. Hopefully she'll be in here in a few minutes and we can ask her those questions because she was going to try and get down here by 2 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock now, and on Megan time that means about 2:10. So she's a very, very busy person. So when she comes down, we'll ask her those questions because those I can't fully answer. Yeah.
I just gave the RISE last week to my classes. And as far as I could tell, I think that it is going to be graded by the AI because it gave them a score almost immediately. So
was it just like a raw score, like a raw cut score?
It was I don't know,
Before.
out of 10 points or something, and then how many points out of 10.
Thank you for that, by the way. Yes, Janice.
I think even more than assessment and how we're going to assess growth, the problems for many of us is how to make changes that go down to the level that it affects students. Anytime we have an initiative at the top, it's really hard to get that down where the teachers and the students live.
I agree with you 100% on that. And one of the things that we want to do is once we get the LEA teams together, we want teachers. We want the people who are in the trenches to really, Ashley's got like a list of quite a few people that she's ready to bring down for these meetings, which should be happening hopefully after Christmas time. We kind of got into a weird time in trying to start the LA team, so we're going to wait till after Christmas break when the dust is more or less settled. But we want those teachers in there. We want the teachers and coaches. We want them helping dictate the direction that this framework is going to move for that specific reason. Because we can say all we want, here's what should be in the document, here's what you should do, but if we're not getting input from those stakeholders, then it's really invalid. Does that help answer your question a little bit, or?
Regardless of who is in the development of the document, what happens often is it moulders on a shelf. Doesn't really get looked at, used, it doesn't make the influence that we'd like it to make. So supporting its implementation is going to be a real concern.
Yes, and so the idea is to get this document finished by the end of this school year so that over the summer we can start developing what kind of professional learning is going to look like for this, and then starting making those offerings available. And we're not sure which kind of format we're going to do first. Those are some things that we're still working on, kind of getting a plan for, but we know that we want to get a document finished first and then start pushing out what those kinds of supports are going to look like so it gets down there where it needs to be. Because I have the same worries. We hear things all the time. We go, okay, that's great. And then there's the shelf and there's it collecting dust. We don't want that to happen. We want to see these changes. Megan, now that you're here, there's a couple of questions.
I was trying to sneak into the back.
I was wrong. It wasn't 2:10. It was 2:03. So
Sorry.
no. We were talking about how busy you are and things are going on. So She's got kind of an insane schedule. So there were 2 questions, and I can't remember who went first. So just go ahead and fire away.
Well, one of our issues is how are we going to compare growth scores from end of year testing when the writing's changed a lot and it goes from 5th grade to 8th grade now? Are they?
So we're going to be doing a new scoring and standard setting at the testing for RISE. Taking out the language arts component, the reading component, totally separate. So they'll be totally separate. You won't get a composite score anymore. And then we'll be doing workshops with committees and development committees where we have recommendations from educators of how we're going to show that growth and everything. So you'll have to wait till probably September to see those reports for growth measurement and everything. So because we haven't done it yet, we have to do the testing first and separate out all the scores. What that looks like, I don't know exactly. But the summer, and I believe we will be doing it. Actually just got a date towards the end of July. We just have to play around with the 24th holiday of when we'll actually be doing that work. And then once that's confirmed, then we'll start to put out the reports and it'll be posted in probably on the RISE portal and also in Data Gateway. But then being able to compare 8th to 9th, that's going to be a little trickier because they're 2 totally different assessments. So they both assess the Utah standards, but because the 9th, 10th Utah Aspire Plus incorporates college and career readiness, it's not going to be apples. It's a different test. Sorry, it's a kind of a vague answer.
Yes, I'd now make 2-part, but the first one was the writing benchmarks that are in the RISE platform, will they be graded with the same AI that is grading the end of year assessment?
Yes.
Will those be available for other grades than just 5?
Yes, and since it was a contract amendment to have the off grades available as well, those are still coming. So we are actually currently working on having the content be approved and making sure the engines and everything are working correctly as we speak. Hence part of the reason why I was late today. But yes, so benchmarks and interims will be ready. Benchmarks are the priority because those are more readily used by the whole field. And then the interims next. We decided benchmarks was the priority because it's more informative for the teacher where they can see the prompt and the student's responses, whereas the interim acts like the summative. They can't see the prompt and response. They can only get the score reports for those. So wanted to have the benchmarks more readily available.
Just to clarify then, unlike the SAGE, where the benchmarks were graded on a more holistic, not so good kind of AI, saying that the RISE will be the similar kinds of assessments?
It should be it should be the same, so it can still trigger condition codes and everything like that. The prompt copy match, duplicate text, not enough, right? It'll be the same. The only difference is, and this is similar to SAGE, in that those just won't go to hand scoring. So.
But a teacher could see the
Yeah.
prompt so they could do their own.
Yeah. Do you have a second question?
I have another one now. Release of more of past SAGE writing items for 9th and 10th. Timeline. I know there are a couple released in Compose now, but do you have a timeline for more, like a 10th grade argument or?
So the plan is to have those put into Utah Compose. And I'm not in charge of that transfer. Jared Wright's team is in charge of transferring those over. We were hoping that they could be transferred at some point during November, but there are copyright issues, legal copyright issues that we still have to navigate with the passages that are associated with those prompts. And so We are working on getting those, the items that are commissioned by us where we own the passages first and foremost, so at least we can get those on there. And then the copyrighted passages will be next, depending on how we can work through that copyright and those legal concerns. And then also for 910, the speaking and listening, those should be available on Utips also. And we're still working on converting those items as well. So when you take items from one platform and transfer them over to another platform, it sounds easy, just saying it, but there are lots of bugs that you encounter. So, and we essentially want those items to be true to what you experienced in the first place. So trying to get them to be as compatible as possible. Those are the speed bumps we've encountered, but Jared Wright's team, he's in charge of transferring all of that. So essentially we want all of 11th grade released and then some of the components for 9th and 10th that aren't being assessed on the Utah Aspire Plus. Yes.
Question, but it's more along the lines of this, and I hope, Garrett, this is what you're asking for, but when we're looking at this literacy framework, something that we're wrestling with in Weber, and it's kind of interesting because we just had, between the conferences that just happened, we just had Carol Jago and Donalyn Miller come and talk, and something that they brought up in their presentations is something that we're dealing with, and they said this is the lowest score that we've ever had on the AP Lit test, ever, which I think is interesting. We're having problems with, as we're looking at the way that we're doing novel instruction in our district, we're kind of analyzing some of the research that's come in. We've got Donalyn Miller who says whole novel instruction ignores most of the pedagogy, student choice, relevancy, reading levels, things like that. You've got Carol Jago who says part of that's good. And then we're looking at a book called A Novel Approach by Kate Roberts, who says that an amalgam of those two is actually the best. We're noticing as we're kind of drilling down on this, we've got a lot of fake reading going on. We've got teachers who are teaching 2 and 3 novels per term, which I can't even imagine. Wow. So we're kind of looking at this as a whole and trying to give some guidelines to our teachers. Are you guys seeing stuff like this? Because that was such a big drop in that literacy score that it kind of was a wake-up call.
I want to pull up my data again to check of what I presented for those for the reading literacy data, so I can speak to it a little more accurately. But if memory serves, I don't recall seeing a drop in literacy, but I want to look at that drill down of the different reporting categories. As we've known, and Garrett and Jennifer can speak to this, integration of knowledge and ideas has always been kind of a historical struggle. So that's an area that we can always focus on. But as far as a drop, I feel like we saw a rise this year, actually, and we felt like across the state, isn't it? We were like, oh, our efforts are paying off in that reporting category.
Nationally, as a state, we're doing okay. We're doing better than most states, like on ACT and some other
Actually,
things.
she was talking about the nation as a whole, and I think this ties back into the attention span thing, because we're seeing a lot of kids who are just, skimming and scanning. They're not really getting into the deep reading. I'm just wondering, if we're looking at literacy, I think this is a pretty big issue, and the fact that these people are talking about it, there's a lot of research on it.
Well, there might be, in terms of the framework, putting in some recommendations around what does high quality English language arts instruction look like versus
For
disciplinary.
novel instruction, how do you, because we're starting to step back from that in Weber and saying, what is actually effective and what isn't effective? This book that we're looking at, this A Novel Approach, is kind of an interesting thing, but I'm just wondering, what are you guys finding?
I want to look at my data before I speak to that, Gale. But when you look at both of our assessments now, and the RISE blueprints are available. They should have been posted already. And
They are posted.
Thank you for confirming. And then the Utah Aspire Plus ones, they are almost completed, but because the portal won't go live till January, we are planning on posting them on our USBE website, the public-facing blueprints. You'll see that there is still an emphasis in informational reading, and so, I would speculate that because there's still a big push on informational reading, you're going to see that pushed more in the classrooms as well. And so that might be a reason. I can't say this is exact. I don't have any data or studies right now to qualify this, but that the focus is still on informational reading. So we've seen novels kind of fall by the wayside. But as far as the different theories go on novel approach, I don't know if we can speak to if different approaches, I don't think we have any kind of empirical data to say this district is teaching this, novel approach, and this is kind of where their scores are at versus this LEA using this novel approach. I think that would be really interesting to take a look at. I think this is a really interesting question, and I would like to look into it more, but I'm not sure without having to put out lots of surveys and getting feedback from the field how we could collect that data.
And it would be muddy.
Well, I think it's looking at the research,
Separate.
going into that. I think the thing with the informational text versus literary is English class is the space for the literary text because all of your other classes are the nonfiction text, right? So that's probably the only environment they're getting literature in a secondary setting. So when you look at your scores, if literacy is low, it might be the ELA teacher trying to spread themselves too thin with trying to broker in the nonfiction.
I have to get 70% nonfiction.
Yeah, because they're not. They're the 30, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the only space that's happening in because social studies is most likely not reading literature and science is certainly not. And so thinking about whose role is what, it might be really looking at your English teachers saying, what are you doing around this? Because I think they've been told, and I think even integration of knowledge and ideas, we're asking them to pull in different sources and having them look at some nonfiction pieces within there. But the vast majority of their instruction's really got to be in literature because nobody else is providing that instruction in the secondary school day.
And to add to that, same thing with writing. I know that in Provo District, we're trying really hard to get content area teachers to reinforce what we teach in English classes, but it's not where it needs to be yet, because I know that they might do a paragraph or they might do a learning journal, but they're not writing a whole essay or a whole argument on their science labs or things like that. So they have to take some of that burden away, because we all have 45 minutes, but English teachers do feel that I have to get this writing unit in, and it takes a whole month to write a series essay, so.
Well, that disciplinary literacy, we talked about that in the state group that's working on this, on the framework with you guys, and the difference between trying to get your disciplines to be reading teachers, they're not. English teachers aren't even reading teachers. So we really have to look at our skill sets and where can we get some of that return in the disciplinary literacy space that the disciplines can feel successful, but also realize it's enhancing their content and not detracting from it. Their perception is, I don't have time for that, I've got to get this in. But kids would have deeper understanding and a lasting understanding if you did a little more literacy-related tests with it, discussion, writing, those types of things. So I think as we work on the framework, that's definitely a piece that's got to come out. And what are the best practices for disciplinary literacy as we look across, so that those are the things we start to get professional learning around and have expectations around. Right now, it's pretty underwhelming what people know, at least the ones I interact with.
One point that one of our friends made online was they've noticed in the AP literature scores, the essay scores seem to be a major contribution to the overall score, which they are, and they're dropping. Trevor Packer mentioned in particular, so much more emphasis has been given on nonfiction reading, leaving many, many students with little experience in poetry and prose analysis. Do you think that's definitely a valid concern? Just wanted to make sure we got that in there so we're not ignoring our friends online.
Well, and that helps to broker into the framework. How do we help them understand the 70-30 in terms of what that actually means in practice? Because when you think 70-30, I'm going to tell you science is not taking on the 30, right? Like that's not their space. There's some science fiction I guess they could read, but again, their primary space is going to be really nonfiction. So helping them actualize it in practice, I think will be and hopefully communicate that in some way as we move forward.
One of the questions that came up, and I think it's a valid concern, was when we're talking about some issues, was this document being done, but then what kind of supports are going to be in place? And I know that you guys are done with the elementary document. What kinds of supports and professional learning are you guys moving forward with this document?
So we are developing resources for each of the elements right now so that when we say, going to do the self-assessment and you're low somewhere, what does it even mean to be low in that? What are the quality resources I should go reference to kind of build my capacity to learn more, those types of things. So we're building kind of a digital library of resources that tie to the elements and the critical indicators of those elements so that when people are like, oh, we're low in self-assessment for kids, really knowing where they are, where they're headed, how they're doing, that there'll be resources that are really targeted and specific. It's not going to be a huge library. It's really going to be a targeted library of what are the top 3 resources, not the top 20. Because there's plenty of stuff out there, but if I really want to go dig in, give me the best of the best rather than give me all of it and let me filter. So we're really going to try and narrow that space down so that when people go, I don't really know what disciplinary literacy means, there'll be resources that really dive into what does disciplinary literacy look like in mathematics or social studies or science, because they're all vastly different. There's some overlap, but there's a lot of nuances. What I look for in social studies is corroboration, context, and some of those things. That doesn't matter in science as much. Corroboration probably, but context is not as important. And so kind of helping people understand what some of those things even mean, but also if we're low in an area, how do we get better? Being able to find some targeted resources that go in that way. That's one way that we're addressing it. I'm sure others will come up as we go. The other thing we did was come up with lines of evidence that say, if you have this in place, here's the evidence pieces that would verify that you have it, because people's self-perceptions and self-survey are not always 100% accurate. But when you ask them for, well, show me the line of evidence that you have a 5 in that category, it helps to clarify what would be an appropriate line of evidence. And then, are you really a 5 once we look at the evidence? So as a district person as yourselves, you can say, oh, you guys took the survey, you're low in this area, your lines of evidence to kind of suggest that you are low there. And they might be better than they are, or they might be worse than they even self-rated. Because self-ratings can be a little inflated if you've ever done them before. But when people truly understand the purpose, they're usually pretty authentic about their rating scales. So those are some of the things we have working towards for the framework supports. And we build PD around like the survey that was built around the framework. So here are the things we want to see in schools. Where are people strong? Where are they feeling less confident? And then that's how we've been designing our professional learning opportunities, is really around the framework and people's levels of confidence in particular elements in the framework. And so that's the driving force for what the state offers at this point, is based on teacher feedback and principals and district administrators giving us that feedback. Although this seems like a document, it actually is a multi-pronged strategy to really leverage what we know from the data and kind of move systems forward. And most people have really taken well to the framework, and people are using it like it's law. It's not law foundations, but sometimes it's easier to say the state said. I'm happy to be that person for you. The state said we have to have this. Because we're not coming up with them because we believe in them. We're coming up with them because that's what the evidence shows is what matters. Not because I have a personal pet project or novels or that kind of thing. Like, what does the evidence say is best practice when it comes to secondary literacy and moving kids in the right direction?
Any other concerns or things that your LEA is facing that you guys want to discuss before we move on? Okay, so what I want to do next, so what we've decided is that we wanted to keep these five elements. We looked at Nevada, we looked at Montana, we looked at a few other states, we looked at some things in their language, their use of language, but what we decided from USB is that we really liked these 5 elements and the language of those 5 elements. And what we're looking is for those measurable, observable indicators of those elements. Again, I don't want a carbon copy of the elementary one. The elementary one's fantastic, but there's obviously some secondary items that are very specific, some content items that are very specific that should be focused on. So that being said, keeping in line with those 5 elements, there's only a few of us left. We keep sifting out. So what I want to do next is there's thinking of 5 groups, so it's probably going to be pairs. So there's instructional leadership, instruction and intervention, assessment and feedback, professional learning, and supportive culture. If you notice, there's 5 pieces of paper hanging up on the walls. So what I want you to do over the next few minutes, and I've got some documents to share, to use just as points of reference. You have the elementary document with you already. Here is Nevada's, and this is Nevada's middle and high school approach. Their elementary was about double the document's length. There's also the adolescent literacy walkthrough for principals to give some ideas for how administrators can be helpful in this process. Now, I'm not asking you to comb through the documents all at one sitting and just say, oh, okay, just read for the next 30 minutes. But I do want you to take some time to look at some of these elements, to think about what are some things that needed. What are those indicators that we need? I expect to get this all done today, but I want to generate some ideas, some brainstorming, so that when we come back as a USBE team, we start getting ideas from the LEAs and then bringing it back to you guys again, saying, okay, what do we do next? What are some more indicators that we want? We want to keep building this as we go. And again, I said, after the new year, we want to get an LEA team together to start looking at what we've finished so far and say, hey, this doesn't work, or this works, but we need a little more of this. So back and forth. So that being said, who is comfortable, 2 of you, who's comfortable looking at things under instructional leadership? Volunteers. I got 1. 1 more. Come on, folks. We can do this.
That particular one we feel a little more confident on.
Okay.
Okay, you're good to go?
All right, I'll have you guys turn up in the back over there. With element number 2, instruction and intervention.
Do that one.
Okay, we got 2 right there, perfect. Assessment and feedback. Okay, we got 1. We have a second. Here another 2, perfect, thank you. Professional learning. Got 2 over there. And finally, supportive culture. Now, it looks like, Megan, that's going to be you and I.
Oh.
All right? So take some time. Take a look at these documents, and they're yours to keep. Just take some time to look through them. Gather some ideas. And then on that large parchment paper, just write, whoever has nice penmanship, I know, Megan, that's not me. I want you to share out with the whole group, looking at some ideas that you've come up with, some key elements you think should be under, or excuse me, key indicators that should be under those elements. So I want you to, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 minutes to kind of sift through some of these materials, to discuss some of the things back and forth, and to then finally writing those things up on the piece of paper that you choose so we can see what kinds of indicators we should be having in these documents. Any questions on what we need to do? Our online friends, think about this as well. I'll be checking in from time to time to see if you have anything in the chat box to share with us. I emailed the Nevada, the Montana, the adolescent literacy walkthrough. I emailed all those things, so it gives you some time to look up some of those pieces of material. If there's things that you want to add on to any of those elements, just go ahead and type it in. I'll be checking from time to time so we can make sure we add that in. All right, so we'll meet back at about 2:39. Right here. I'll bring some stuff.
Yeah, that was you, right? Yes. Sustainable leadership. Okay.
So I guess the biggest thing is.
We're just curious. Montana, Nevada were identified as models.
I'm just curious.
Well,
Yeah, so we know.
the elementary literacy, they used they really focused on some of the things that they were doing. It was just very comprehensive. And when I started looking at, I looked at Minnesota, I looked at a few other states, but a lot of the language we were adopting, or a lot of things I looked at were coming from Nevada. It was more of like a, not a crapshoot, like, oh, hey, what state? Just kind of seeing what was there. And like Montana had elements, and then I think I can't remember what they call them, but they had 8 components. Nevada had 5. So we decided, 5 is a good number. So we started looking at the language of them, and I mean, they're all overlapping. And so those were the 5 elements that elementary came up with. We're like, we don't want to reinvent that.
Right, you almost need this and this.
No, that's
and
right.
they develop now.
And I like how Nevada leads it, and I like that they have a specific middle school one.
And this is ours.
It seemed like a lot of extra work, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's the style pretty on a yearly basis.
Thank you.
It's the elementary, yes.
So this is the.
The elementary one is from our state. That's the one that you got right under the.
Which, or just, yeah, self-assessment. Don't really know if that's the case either.
Let me know if you have any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
As the principal paper.
Well, that's, I think that's, if we're trying to adopt a curriculum that requires the kids like talk about it.
Tier 2.
These are the elements.
In a classroom.
For elementary.
No,
So-
literally.
Exactly.
In a class of 40.
You think so? But if there's something that you're like, hey, that's this, or, yeah, perfect, thanks.
You don't have to use.
Well, I like that we're doing
Yeah,
this.
I think the first,
What's the learning conditions?
You learn how to read. 10% that don't read.
like this should be the case, they should have evidence-based curriculum for,
So,
especially math and science and history that have a text.
I feel like,
Frameworks of being evidence-based.
so these are the indicators to show.
Uh-huh.
Right off the bat, or your pen, it says culture efficacy and high.
I want to look into the.
Student learning. But I think, one thing, where does it say that this, so a student to be collected?
Right.
You know, 'cause, so Whitney and I presented, this is like a new emerging and just like 16. Classroom efficacy, collective efficacy, self-efficacy.
Losing time.
No.
Significant.
Now there's this other efficacy of collective classroom efficacy where the same is worse. Just for now.
No, they won't. We'll see it good every grade.
That's it usually ends up being PLC. At least in my experience, it's been PLC, and that's where all different your grades.
And for me, it's always
So I
that.
guess it's this hard a little bit, but from my experience, our 10th grade.
But I mean, we can always
But
put it
it's
different,
not
yeah.
high. But it's not whatever standard it was in our SSEs. My kids got it, and you have to do things to get them to buy it. 85% of my class.
Oh, just below the pieces of paper, so I can read it right.
I'm on 8 now, and I'm finding they've got a.
I'm gonna put on ours. Yeah.
Am I doing that?
Oh,
You know what?
ours.
All right, but this is talking about like, so when I'm looking at this, have something to write about.
I think that's where I guess I would still just be the teacher.
That's important because that 70% is happening in content.
That was. On the one English teacher, yeah, I agree. That's really good, and I don't know.
No, it's not.
Well, and as we're looking at these different with secondary, so that's the second part. Yeah, this is a good.
I think that's a
add.
really good.
Yeah.
Part of the process, which actually
So do you want to add,
growth because they don't have.
do you have any post-it notes or do you want us to put it up there?
You want to do it up here, or do you want me to bring it
I
down?
understand what this is.
Well, could you bring us back? There's the cloud men.
No thunder from down under. That was Kim's request, not mine.
We go way back, so.
There you go.
Yeah, that's really good.
Okay,
And I
so,
think that's a good point, and I think you articulated it beautifully, because it's not really clear, but I'm hoping that's what they mean. But I really like what you said.
so I'm kind of like an A through G. So, should I write that down here?
Yeah. We love to add.
It's a good initiative.
Seems like most people want it at their table.
A lot of these are,
They're like, which one?
yep. And then we like this one.
Most people request.
So we're thinking about that. Right.
Okay, and then add.
And then, or that your content area.
You're right about the same thing, like the same spelling, just so inappropriate for an English teacher. Good in the British Common. Good excuse,
I'm gonna
right?
put this down here, so we start throwing ideas on here.
See, little things like that change.
Okay, Mark said it's for who writes.
beautiful, too. Then you sound a little bit.
Then you don't know.
You just, you know, yeah, oh, did you read that? Oh, great. Go right
You know what, I can put on my scaffolding, isn't it pretty?
Support, good thing I'm not an engineer.
Prior to this year, I just redid our secondary reading decision tree for whether or not like our middle school kids actually put it into your 2 reading class.
So it seems like something like this would
So what do you
be
think?
intervention or
Why?
recommendation.
I teach part-time, they can't wrench me out of the
And then
classroom, so I
proficient?
teach 3 class
Tier
periods
1 class.
in the morning. And then I'm at.
What was that, classroom?
One day to watch.
So you do all secondary, not just secondary?
Just
So I
secondary
redid our
ELA.
things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Look at their difference, look at their, if they have
I don't know how they do all that content.
subtests for Sage or Rise.
Right. Well, and it's fine to say integrated across.
Look at multi-data points if they're available. If they're not available,
Yeah.
it's not like you have a brand new kid coming in
But-
from your district, they're gonna have access to get a comprehensive grant.
LA core.
Goes through the standards.
I've been trained how to look at that native
Really
our
clear.
leaders.
This is where I.
Interesting, they've listed all of those.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, it's just.
I don't know, I wondered about that too, because, but then I wonder if that's in a different, section.
Okay, well, and here it was, no. Well,
that
then
in-
the social leadership, they set measurable goals for
Yeah,
academic
and I
It's like the walkthrough did, but after that, it's.
They had a set.
Yeah, because instruction, yeah, it's gotta be an intervention, don't you think, for goals?
She found a lot of really good ideas in here when it
Database.
comes to getting our.
Assessment,
Here's
yeah.
things you can do.
It's gotta be in those, because I don't.
Yeah, there's school data.
Oh, yeah. Here, someone has to hand it to them. I give it.
Yeah.
You're like, here's one other.
As I read through it, I'm like, oh man, where's this going?
Related but partially random feedback. My curriculum directors are telling me that their curriculum directors.
I don't want the instructional leaders setting the goals for individual teachers, but it would be really cool if, I mean, what would happen if, yeah, if like the school had a goal.
Knowledge
or-
transportation.
Just
So then they're
something
delayed.
like that.
Kelly, what
We're
we talking
trying to
about?
do something that they haven't heard
What are you talking about?
There's a lot of things that I like that.
Well, you know, okay, so I'm gonna kind of tie that goal setting into this. If it's a school-wide goal, then everybody's working
That would be
toward
an
that goal.
admin kind of a thing,
Yeah,
a leader
yeah,
kind of.
or, yeah, that leadership group,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, so I think that's one thing that I don't
Yeah,
see.
not
might be
necessarily,
a
but I mean, it's general, you know, Amber will say, like, I don't
Because
hear,
maybe in elementary, just
like, I hear from you.
we do, we look at it school-wide and, you know, grade level-wide and content-wide and.
I think, according to this, I mean, they said that they recommended having it in the
Because we're getting ready for 90 days.
October or the November?
I'm wondering if it has somebody.
Like, okay, what's your position in your district?
Okay,
I really don't have us to support too.
so looking at that shift from fixed to growth, okay.
I also think that actor in our school district, he was like,
That's realistic in a secondary setting.
so now, you know what I don't know.
Yeah, so what, I mean, do you guys have?
Okay.
Well, yeah,
That was, yeah, and that's, we're definitely
I feel like our instructional coaches are really just for teachers to like help them with their teachers, not really to like show them. It's not really for math. I'm sorry. No, we're still
Focusing on like, well, or what we know their grades are.
So what else can I do?
Very little on their reading. Seventh grader, what are you gonna do to get them ongoing? Is the issue, is it something more than you have to drill down specifically to the way through?
I think that like, I think like the only issue is just the only team that is probably looking to be like our special ed teachers. I think it should be.
I mean, they should be, but that's not fair. Maybe there's how many schools are you over?
All of them, all the secondary, that's why it's those kids that are getting extra, and it's not like kids that don't relate to that.
would teachers fall under that category?
Because it's like you have those donut hole kids too.
I guess when I think of supportive culture,
Need special ed.
how often are teachers communicating with families about how it Well, it talks about,
Are they just lack of fluency or?
meaningfully engaged stakeholders, like, where do teachers fall under that, or are we just saying the school in general?
I don't know. That's where you.
What are they reading? But I would add to this, like, meaningful interaction, text, academic discussion. So that would be another elementary.
And that's usually what maybe not what
They think, but at least weekly. I thought.
I guess for supportive culture, like how much weight do we want to put on teachers saying there needs to be some kind of communication aside from school or whatever. So one of the things I think, and it's not because I'm yeah, how often are you doing it? So my thing was, if any kid had a C- or lower, I called, physically called. If I couldn't get the phone, then I would, like, I had a lot of students coming in the next hundreds of years. So they turned my phone out. And all of a sudden, the issues I was having with assignments that I couldn't assess was going away because they were turning in assignments that I could assess what they know.
Okay.
So it's they're now sophomores in college. It's 5% higher suicide rate. Some of this stuff is just insane.
That would be awesome.
A brain that's fully developed, you know?
Oh, I can't just say something. Let's collaborate on one. I want to collaborate. They just have in the eyes of its gender. It's just
They have goal setting in the other elements though.
I guess that would be their universal.
I don't know, that needs to be different.
And that could be something we bring up when we go over this document.
Oh, it makes me think of that banquet quote from Grandma Page. You weren't very successful. You do that for a while, you know?
Use less students are learning for assessment as observations. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, primary source information.
So, yeah.
I guess that.
So I don't know, it makes me wonder if
Well,
we're
but no,
getting
like,
them ready for society.
Yeah.
Frankenstein, where his wife says,
Yeah.
only ask yourself if
And we saw a dip in there last year from just losing.
That makes me happy you just had it.
Staff has to be
Should see innovation.
I mean, just other talking during,
integrate 4 hours.
so potentially I'm thinking, maybe we need more turn and talk. We do. Just, I don't know. It's so easy.
Yeah, it does.
Someone here in the So, just, I'm a teacher and I unpack this damn interesting dive into the rabbit hole.
At the beginning, I was
Just awesome.
We're gonna wrap up in about 2 minutes.
No, is there a way we can curb this? Because I think there is.
We started running out of time, sorry.
Okay, it's too much stuff, that's good though. It's a good
You can just say, hey, here's what we came up with. You don't have anything to write. It was. That's why when you two tackled it, I knew we were doing good.
This is so well, you know, this
See our black paper and
is so on the elementary, so well laid out. Yeah, so well laid out. We compared it and we just found
And that's what some
one
people
thing
do,
that was
right?
just
Keep
more
those, let's talk about
elementary,
it.
that might be the common, and then one thing that we wanted to add.
Gorgeous. Like 18 ELA core, reading intervention, and disciplinary.
I think our one part was like change.
There's a rocket.
And then I think we also like. Do you want to
Right,
back up?
right.
What's that?
Well, and I think that's what.
That's what we said. Yeah, and then
That's
that's.
core, she reflected on that.
And that's explicit in core. That's pretty explicit in core.
If they don't have a learning target, consider ELA core, reading intervention versus closer to having mastered this.
Right. Yeah, so I appreciated how general it is. A lot of stuff you just that I felt like was just kind of.
So would it be better if we stayed to your?
Well, I just went to their website and everybody found it, so. This made me excited to hear it came out, so.
I, something just to die, like if they would be.
This is sharp.
Right.
It's really sharp.
But I actually do,
Like just from my own learning, like I like
periodically.
they do understand what master every class.
We really focus on.
They're out of one, I don't understand.
Initially, we were going to do pre-K to 12, and
What does it
then
look like? Their whole, I mean, their entire staff is like, yes. Well, I should say person, but overall, it's very nice.
I appreciated your comments. I still want to follow up on that. This is such a lovable website.
There was something in there.
Lit circles. Well, yeah, and so they're just, the data's kind of.
Do you want us to hang up our posters?
Yeah, when you're done, just hang them up.
The
Do
emotional.
you want them up front or do you care?
Probably up front, since we're gonna talk about, one of you gets to be the presenter. So touch noses, paper, rock, scissors, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
That's Kate Roberts' approach. Is maybe you should teach one novel a year and then circle it out and do what circles after that.
So you mentioned that, no. That's what my entire dissertation is on. Is actually more reluctant readers and struggling readers, but it was like, where are the supports? Because all the boys were doing the same things that I did in high school.
So my
in
kids are
junior
doing
high.
lit circles right
And
now.
I call them out on it, and they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I just experienced, I wasn't gonna tell them that I did the same book for 4 years in a row. You know, those are the things I did in high school. There was nothing.
Well, I think you look at the middle school level, you have some reading classes for 6th grade, but there's nothing for 7th and 8th grade.
And when they cut reading from a year long to a semester in 7th grade, and that was it for reading classes, to me, that was like, this is not achievable. It's the wrong message, and thoroughly. So, because when I went up from 7th to the high
We're
school.
going to post this book study, so if you
I
all want to join
started
us on this, Kate Roberts
taking the things
and
I was
Novel
doing
Approach,
for the
we'll
endorsement,
have
and
that
I was
posted.
just, assessing some of the kids I knew were pretty low. And I'm like, my goodness, this kid has.
Well, Donalyn never wrote me forward for this, so
I
I'm going to have her
don't
bus
know.
for me dinner.
They were throwing them in the classroom, small computer lab under my name and having them do read 180,
So.
the free version, with just scanning how many words per minute they'd done. That was the only intervention that was done. So, and I didn't know that because I was teaching a class during that grade. So when I walked in, I was like, oh, no. And we had a paraprofessional that was taking care of it. She's great, but she's not quick.
Right.
So now they actually have a course, and Jackie Colton's been pretty hardcore about it. She's brought in a lot more students at the high school level, but again, high school's like, we're getting to the point where it's too late. What's happening down in late
That was
elementary,
interesting
what's happening.
last time. Yeah.
So, yeah. And on that note, so yes, no, there was.
Pull it out like that, so.
Very much. I'll shoot you the toolkit for struggling readers. That can give you some ideas
Maybe
of
we just
things
need
to
to write
do.
one on how we teach it.
It's a document we created a while
Well,
ago.
through reading and through writing.
All the links are still, but it's got resources of things you can.
It's relevant.
I did the last one, which was on motivation.
Interesting.
Sometimes it takes a hunting manual to get.
Oh, well, it's been around.
And if that's what it takes, whatever.
My projects this trimester, I let kids decide between a book project and like a research thing, anything that they wanted to research, as long as they were like good.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you don't like to read books, but you like.
Well, I had Josh Layton in seventh, and then I had him in 10th, and I was gonna have him in next year, but I left after that, but I could not get him to
I
do
don't
it.
have words. I think the grammar thing.
I gotta do something, in seventh grade, he didn't care because it didn't count.
So we did them down, just they get two
When we
vocab
have
words.
literature.
We will have that
When
tomorrow.
brings it in,
Each group
it is a
works
thick
the
book
stuff.
that he has
We decided
gone
that
back and
so
forth
or
with.
No.
All the academic material was high level, excellent.
Because
Holy crap, you can do all this and then some, like,
Their
this
grammar
is
comes
higher than anything we've done in
But
class.
writing sentences.
So we did a hunting, we did a lesson on hunting. And he helped jump in on that,
Nine,
he's still like,
we've got 6 votes.
it didn't change a whole lot, other than the fact that I was able to assess and really understand, like, oh, he does
You
this.
know, I talk about.
We're not.
How do you find it?
I think that's,
I love that because
that's just gonna be the uphill battle.
just focus on it.
All right, so,
The evidence.
we're starting to get slim on time. So we're gonna have our friends, who is our instructional leadership team?
That was us.
All right, can you guys come up and just show us some things that,
So, where's our little thing? Says they did such a good job.
yes, Jennifer's gonna hold it.
Well, Jennifer and crew were so awesome that we love keeping the A through G from that elementary framework. But then we realized that in secondary schools, we're teaching in silos, but if 70% of it is informational text, that is not the English teacher's job. And so to add something where that administration communicates a shared responsibility for student literacy.
We want to share the love.
So it's not just that teacher's responsibility, it's all of our responsibility.
And we appreciated what the Utah team did because it looked like Montana and who was the Nevada just vomited a lot of resources in there. This was really succinct, there's a difference between a strategy and an instructional outcome. So it was good. It was really good.
In addition, we could clearly state what we mean by setting stage too, so.
And then we talked about school-wide goals, because that would be a leadership role. We didn't see anything on that. And in secondary, kind of when you have a whole school working towards something or a whole grade level team working towards something, that's really effective. That was the only thing.
It just hits working with Wasatch High to do this work, and this is what they're doing, right? They have set a school-wide goal around literacy that everyone's approaching. They've addressed, everyone has a meaningful interaction with text at least once a week, and they're training them on what a meaningful interaction looks like. Because it looks different across the content areas, but they're doing these two things, and they're not addressing them. That's what's working for them,
Utah
right?
team.
So, well done.
Yeah, really good.
Okay, good. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions about what they've produced? Okay, let's have instruction and intervention folks come on up.
A, B, D, F, and G could be kept as is, but C and E really would need to be developed into different either sections for core ELA versus ELA reading intervention versus content literacy, because those were the ones about recommendations for time and curriculum, evidence-based curriculum, and that would need to be separate for all of those things. Thought that we consider that we might need a separate middle versus high school, as instruction looks different maybe, but we wondered if it's different enough that it would just be parentheses, versus needs to be separate. The other thing we like that we really wanted to incorporate for this part was there in the principals walkthrough, there are a number of checklists for look-fors, and we thought that that would be helpful, and especially in this section, what does instruction look like when it has a lot of literacy components? And then we wanted to add either an H would be like meaningful interactions with text. If we added another component, it would be, what does that look like? How often is it? And what does it look like to be meaningfully?
Learned a while, so just meaningful engagement means very different things to people. You have to be clear about what that actually looks like.
Active.
Yes, it's a little different.
Thank you. All right, time permitting, let's get on to assessment and feedback. Who are our assessment and feedback friends?
That's the green one.
That's like there's data.
So we kind of looked at, well, we just started looking at this because we got sucked into the Nevada and the Montana ones.
Right.
But some of the things that we liked from those two other documents was having a leadership team and a data team. And that looks different depending on where you're at. But the leadership team, one of the things that I've seen too sometimes is leadership teams come together depending on who they are and they don't know how to look at the data. So that would be one, is that they understand that, you know, they're doing a universal screener at their school, that they understand what it looks like and how to those resources and things.
Yeah.
We meet 3 times a year to look at that screener data. So it's not just, oh, this is it. This is the only thing a year, because you need to be able to progress. The data team one we liked because it's kind of ongoing. It's like your PLCs or your grade level team. We made up of different people. Again, people who know what they're looking at with the data. You know, if they're looking at an RI score and they're, you know, looking at Lexiles, what does that mean? How are you going to use it in your instruction?
There would need to be professional development for stuff like that so that they knew how to interpret that data.
And I know that the Utah one, just looking at it, it talks about lots of assessment, but it never mentions specifically universal screener, but I just figured it was.
That is for us.
So it's sort of, you don't need to explicitly state that in your stuff, but I think for secondary it's an issue because you don't see a lot of tier 2 interventions happening in secondary classroom. Progress monitoring, what is that? What does that even mean? So I think having like a universal screener, something like RI or whatever you wanted to use 3 times a year, so you could actually then progress monitor using other formative assessments, formal or informal, using summative assessments, you know, like the RISE or the ACT. I don't know what that's going to look like anymore. Yeah, benchmarks, interims, all of that stuff, using the assessment to kind of guide where you're at with those reading programs or your tier 2s or tier 3 if that's necessary. And then one other thing that we saw in the Montana one was also not only assessing the students, but assessing your programs and the curriculum you're using. If you're using Read 180 or Language Live, is it working? Are you getting, is there an effect size? Is the intervention effective? So doing that kind of assessment as well. And then the feedback, I think it's more in secondary that you need to have the students looking at their own data, because otherwise you're not going to see an effect size with that either, because who cares if you can look at it? Kids need to be held accountable for it too. And I think that's one of the things that Utah does well, is that G part is educators engage students in monitoring and assessing their own learning in relation to the system.
Awesome, thank you, very good.
One of the things that bottom piece around data, we are partnering with Fisher and Fry to come do an intensive professional learning project with school districts that are interested to help move to a space of assessment capable, visible learners. Like kids know where they're supposed to be, where they're headed, how they're going to get there, and where they are right now, and really helping implement. So not just sit and get like, here, we'll train you on what assessment capable learners look like and what that practice is, but an implementation plan of how to get it going at the school level so that it actually becomes basically an operating procedure for a school district or a charter that wants to do that kind of work. So if you're interested, email Garrett or I, and we'll add you to the list of interested. Doesn't mean anything right now, but we're looking at doing an intensive professional learning where multiple days over the course of the next probably 18 months to 2 years, working with Fisher and Fry and some of their colleagues to really bring assessment capable learners to the space, knowing it has such a big effect size, and when kids actually know what they're supposed to learn, relevancy seems to be a little bit more practical. So that's something we're working on. We're meeting with them in a couple weeks to really lay out the long-term plan of what this looks like, and we'll have more information coming out. But if you're interested, let me know. We let the elementary folks know this morning, and so if you have, it would be bringing a team from your LEA that would be leading the work, building their capacity to then go build the capacity of others. And we'll use the assessment capable visible learner book. They have a kind of a practice guide now that walks people through how to implement. So we'll use that as well, and we'll provide resources and some funding to help you get work. But it will be a monitored in terms of implementation. It's not just come and learn and do nothing with it, but like, here's the next steps we're going to take in our LEA. Here's the next steps. Come back. Doug and Nancy will lead you through the next steps. You'll have your own ability to be flexible and think about how this works in your LEA. So it won't be scripted or like you have to do it in this particular strategy, but they'll give you some tools and thought-provoking opportunities to talk with your team about what would implementation look like moving forward. So one of the things we talked about for the first time is, here's what it looks like. Now we want you to go collect baseline data on how this looks in your LEA, because you got to know where you're starting from. Those of you that have been working on learning intentions and success criteria are going to be a lot further along than people that know no idea what those are, because that's a huge part of being an assessment capable learner. Teachers have to know what they're teaching, why they're teaching it, and how they're going to know kids got it to be able to communicate that to kids who can then self-assess if they got there. So if you're interested, email Garrett or I, and we'll be happy to get you at least on the list of interested parties.
Let's get to professional learning. We don't want to forget about you folks. I know we're getting close to the end. Just a couple more things we got to touch on.
I'll be quick. So we talked about having relevant, ongoing, frequent, job-embedded, differentiated PD for teachers available. Having exemplars and models for teachers to be able to go and do, peer review, or not review, that's not the right word, what am I thinking of, but being able to go and see another teacher model what's good in teaching, not grade them or anything like that, obviously. ELA teacher training in reading, like making sure our secondary English teachers actually know how to teach reading, because we see there's a huge need for that. And then making sure non-ELA teachers are trained on that content literacy, unpacking the standards for literacy, making sure we have secondary literacy coaches to support all teachers, and then making sure that teachers have the resources they need for the tier 1 and tier 2, and of course PLCs we didn't put there, but you get the idea. That was rundown.
Thank you.
My question for you all is, there's a difference between, because I've seen this on a couple posters now, content area literacy and disciplinary literacy. How familiar are you with the difference? Most people aren't, so I just want to check in. It might be something we can have some conversations around in the future. Because content area literacy is more like the reading strategies, generic kind of practices. Disciplinary literacy is taking, I teach math, here are the strategies that work in math for literacy. So it's not like graphic organizers. That works in any setting. That's content area literacy. Whereas corroboration across authors in social studies is a disciplinary literacy strategy. So there's some differences between the two, and I've just spent some time in that space. So if we might want to dig into what, maybe we need both. Maybe we need content area and disciplinary literacy. Just something to kind of think about. It's just teased in my mind by listening to you guys. Go this one.
Supportive culture. So one of the things we were looking at on the Utah elements is looking at where's the student buy-in piece. So we've talked about collective classroom efficacy. That would be like an identifier we'd want to put in there. Where are you of student buy-in? Are they active participants, or are you just kind of swimming upstream all the time with them? We also looked at faculty and students given support to shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, because in the elementary document talks about growth mindset. But what we were thinking is we would want to see something that discusses that shifting, moving from that fixed to a growth mindset. And then we had a question about the sixth literacy update possible in secondary. Is that possible to do? Is to have 6 literacy updates during the year in the secondary setting? How often do schools engage stakeholders? Who makes up the schools? What kinds of things are taking place? I think we'd want to parse that out a little bit more at the secondary level. And then how is the confident staff addressed by the indicators? As it talks about having a confident staff and being integral to the supportive culture. So where do we see that indicated with those indicators? And so those are some of the things that we touched on. I know we are just a little bit over time, so I just want to run through this real quick. Sorry that we ran over. I'll make sure that next meeting we begin with these elements. I think what we're going to do is we'll take a lot of this feedback when we start developing the document further. I'd like to actually share the feedback that you've given us that we start incorporating into the document in January, and kind of sitting down and really getting our teeth into it and seeing what this document should look like and how we want it to be parsed out. Some of you have already participated in this needs assessment. We're just focusing, we need at least 16 LEAs, so I just need a couple more. I've got some interviews set up this week and next week. I'm just trying to get a few more. I know Ashley took those questions and actually put them out to the teachers and administrators. So I'm looking forward to getting that back, because what did you have, 17 responds?
Now we're up to 20-something.
20-something, so I mean, that gives us even more to work with. So I will be putting another email out very soon about this needs assessment. I'm going to see exactly how many people I have lined up. I might be bugging charters or rural schools. I've gotten a couple of rural schools, school districts to participate. I've got some big districts. I've got some suburban ones, some in between, but I haven't really had any teeth with charters yet. So I'm going to be reaching out to, I want to get a feel of all of the different kinds of LEAs. That being said, expect to see an email in the next week or so about that. If you haven't already signed up, I'd like you to sign up. We don't want just 16. I'd love to get more. I'd love to have a bigger sample size.
You all know why he's doing this, right? We need to know what to do for you. So it's one way for us to really get a pulse on the environment and get context in your own selfish needs, so that we can see if there's selfish needs across that have some commonalities, but also there might be something that you just need that's important enough to us to be able to provide as well. So be really honest in those questions and conversations so that you get what you want, because it's ultimately just going to guide Garrett's work moving forward.
And when I share the responses, they're anonymous, because we talked about this at the last literacy directors meeting, just talking about, some of the things that you want to see, some of the things. One of my interviews, I said, is this anonymous? Can I really say what I want to say? Absolutely. This is not going to be so-and-so from this area said this. And then she's like, we've got nothing. We've got nothing. And it's so frustrating. We really want to see this. So that gives me obviously, okay, well, that was a very broad answer, but we started focusing on some more specifics as the interview went on about some of their needs. Because what I want to do is really help me help you, in words of Jerry Maguire, right? Is find out what those needs are, the most urgent needs, so that we can start developing some good support for you, some professional development, professional learning that will help facilitate that. So that being said, mark your calendars. The next literacy directors meetings, we have January 23rd, 2019, and we have March 19th of 2019. The January one, again, I think we'll start with what we've been doing right here. We're going to take this to the USBE team, start incorporating some of those things in the document. We're going to share that document with you, and we're going to get feedback. Last but not least, Kim wanted to talk about a couple things happening. I'll let you take the floor.
Okay, awesome.
It'll be like 2 minutes.
2 minutes, I promise. This is a really good writing contest, and the only reason that I'm bringing it up in front of everybody, it's for 7th and 8th grade, is because what's going on in our schools right now. with teen suicide, some of the depression that our kids are dealing with. We paid a lot of money to have the Rachel Challenge come to our school, like almost $10,000. This is free. Can you change the slide?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay. This is just really fast, but I would just send this out to your 7th and 8th grade teachers. The students that win a trip for their parents and their teacher. I've been to DC 7 times with this contest. We just need to get more people participating. So the essays are scored on content only. So it makes it really accessible and equitable. The kids are writing about their feelings. It gives you a really good opportunity to teach voice and things like that. Can you go to the next slide? Is there something I can hit?
I got it.
Okay. 2 winners serve as ambassadors against bullying. And so a boy and a girl from each state are sent to DC. Oh, thank you. Can't see. They're honored at the Kuwait Embassy. It's just a fabulous contest. The country of Kuwait sponsors this, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Great big formal gathering at the very end, which is pretty cool. This is a link. He'll send this out to you, and there's a link. I wrote a little essay about what happens in my classroom and the reason why I use this. I center the whole year around human rights. And then here's the link to our Utah Juvenile Justice Board that sponsors the contest. It's got lesson plans. It's got everything that you need, the deadlines and everything. But if you can get this out to your 7th and 8th grade teachers, this is free and it's fantastic. The conversations that you have are powerful. Highly recommend it. Thanks so much. See, less than 3 minutes.
That's awesome. Any questions or comments before we adjourn? Thank you, guys. Sorry we went over a few minutes. We had a lot to cover. Again, I think what we'll do is we'll hit the ground running with this literacy framework first thing on the next meeting on January 23rd. And I look forward to seeing you then. If you have any questions or concerns or things that you need to discuss with me, shoot me an email, give me a phone call. I'll be happy to answer. And other than that, have a great day. Make sure you get your tickets validated if you haven't done so already for parking, so you don't get to the gate and it's awkward and holding up the line and everything.
So where do we go? North